Whenever you are.
Okay. I'll just introduce you for like a minute and then I'll disappear. Hello. Hello, good morning. Oh, actually, good afternoon now. Thank you for coming to the museum today, particularly it's Kids Week, and it's a big day. It's kind of like our this is our best day of Kids Week, I think, mainly because you're here. But no, it's a really good day today. We've got some very exciting things going on, including my friend Ricky Arnold, who will be speaking to you here in just a few seconds. But I have the honor of introducing him because I was an astronaut as well for 18 years. Ricky and I overlapped for a while. I became an astronaut in '96. Ricky was selected in 2004.
Right.
So we worked together for a while, and because I left, and for about 10 years we were astronauts together. Reminded me we shared an office together.
I think twice.
So I was saying some really stupid stories here, and and Ellen was kind of like, "Oh, this is really silly story you're saying," but Ricky understands because he said he shared an office with me all those years, so we had a lot of fun together. Being an astronaut, so a great job. You get to fly in space and do some really fun things, but I think the thing that makes it really special is the people you get to work with. Just great people we get to work with. Ricky's going to tell you about his background, but it's very interesting. He's got a master's degree in marine and environmental sciences, and I think something else is in there that I can't pronounce. Okay, he'll tell you what that is. So he's got a very strong educational background. He also, interestingly, I think, was a teacher, an educator for many years, but in some really cool places around the world, quite extraordinary places where he got to teach. Selected by NASA, as said, is in 2004 in that astronaut class. Has flown twice in space. And what's interesting about his career, I only got to fly on the space shuttle. Ricky got to fly on the space shuttle and on the Soyuz to space. He went with the space shuttle to the International Space Station to help build the space station. That was his first space flight. Did a couple spacewalks on that mission, and then he went again more recently. But were you in space 2 years ago today, or?
Yeah.
So 2 years ago he was in space, right? You got back about a year and a half ago.
Right.
And he spent over 6 months. You guys, 190 days or so you're up there?
197, but who was counting?
That's a lot of days in space. So he has the experience of flying on the two launch vehicles that we've had over the past few decades. The only way you were going to get there, if you're an astronaut, was shuttle and Soyuz. He did both of those. He helped build a space station, and he got to live on it for over 6 months as well. So a lot of great experience. Super guy. Please help me welcome Ricky to the stage.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here with you this morning at this amazing museum. Thanks, Mike, for the generous words. And there's a lesson there that I think for all of us. When I arrived as a new guy in 2004, Mike was one of the veteran astronauts that I had the pleasure of getting to know. He was working hard to fly in space himself and to do the things he wanted to do in space with his career at NASA. But he always had time for me to help prepare me for my career. And you think about it, I went to NASA probably around age 39, 40. Mike had been there a little bit longer, and I was still an active learner, and I was really fortunate to have mentors like Mike who helped put me on the right path in my new career. And so I think there's a lesson there for all of us. One, you're never done learning, and two, you should never be done investing in other people around you. And Mike certainly exemplified that and continues to exemplify that in his role up here at the Intrepid Museum and up at Columbia University. The second piece that Mike alluded to, and I would encourage you after you leave here today, he alluded to my former career as an educator. I did teach in Maryland, and my wife and I also managed to have a wonderful career teaching overseas from kids from all around the world, in North Africa, in the Middle East, in the Far East, and also in Eastern Europe. And when I was assigned to go to the International Space Station for my long-duration stay, one of my classmates, astronaut classmates, had also been a teacher in his prior career, and we kind of overlapped. He was up there for 6 months, came home. A couple weeks later, I flew and was up there for 6 months and came home. And we decided, NASA decided, we were going to celebrate this with the year of education on station. And so there are a lot of really good things on YouTube and on the NASA website for demonstrations, like demonstrations only with STEM. For all those questions you have, how do you sleep in space? How do we get water in space? How do we get power in space? How is the space station assembled? How do we do a spacewalk? There's all kinds of great lesson material out there, including some of the lessons that Krista McAuliffe was meant to do when we lost the Space Shuttle Challenger. Many of you might remember Krista McAuliffe was a high school teacher from Concord, New Hampshire, who was picked to be the teacher in space, and was tragically her and her crew were lost when we lost Challenger. But some of those lessons were actually completed during the year of education on station. So I encourage you to go have a look at the NASA website, YouTube. You can go to the Challenger Center, and if you're interested in all those questions you're going to have, that will hopefully, the questions you're going to come up with when you meet with Allison today, or you walk around the space shuttle, or check out the Soyuz capsule, or maybe from some of the videos I show you today if I can't get to answer all your questions. So what I would like to do this morning or this afternoon, for 10 minutes, at NASA I've had really interesting opportunities to view Earth in different perspectives. And what I would like to do is just show some home movies from some of the opportunities I've had at NASA, and talk over the movies, and just share a little bit about the perspective, a rather unique perspective that I've been fortunate to have about this magnificent planet we all share, and the amazing things that human beings are doing together in low Earth orbit. How many of you here are under 20 years old? Yeah, I can't raise my hand. You folks, there's never been a moment in your life where there has not been a human being living in space, thanks to the International Space Station. And I'd like to show you a little bit about that right now. So if we can dim the lights. And this is just to it makes me look better, but it also makes the images look a little bit better. I had the opportunity a few years ago to join an international crew exploring a massive cave system under the island of Sardinia off the coast of Italy. And you might ask, what were astronauts doing underground? Well, we were thinking about what's it going to be like to explore another planet within the solar system. And caves are really unique environments because they are places without sunlight where their own life forms have evolved and developed. There's species found in this cave that can be found nowhere else in the world. So we were thinking about what it would be like to explore another planetary surface. I also, several years ago, got the opportunity to live for 10 days under the ocean off the coast of Florida with a crew of 6, thinking about what it would be like to live and work on a planetary surface. And you might be thinking, well, why would you do that underwater? And it's because we can simulate different gravitational fields that the different planets have in the solar system. Or like the moon is 1/6 of Earth's gravity, Mars is about 1/4, and we can actually simulate that living underwater. And that was our habitat that we spent 10 days never coming to the surface. But to get a really unique view of this planet, you have to leave it. And to that, you need to ride on a rocket. And I had the opportunity in 2009, as Mike said, to join a crew of 7 to launch on Space Shuttle Discovery to the International Space Station on an assembly mission to help finish construction of the International Space Station. It's about a 12-day mission. This was one of the more exciting days. The main engines light, the whole vehicle pitches forward, and then as it rocks back and is kind of pointed in the right direction they want it to go, the solid rocket motors light. The crew on the International Space Station, including Sandy's hair, is watching. And off we go from sitting at sea level, sitting still in Florida. And about 8.5 minutes later, we'll be 240 miles above the Earth's surface, going over 17,000 miles an hour. It's pure acceleration. And you can see the solid rocket motors, they burn for about 2.5 minutes. And they would fall off and land back in the Atlantic Ocean, where the recovery ships would go get them, process them so we could reuse them. And then we would continue on those 3 points of light near the tail of the space shuttle. The space shuttle main engines would keep us accelerating until that big orange tank, the fuel was empty. You're in space. Two things you can't prepare for: things floating. We can't train that very well here on Earth, what microgravity feels like, big smiles. We also can't prepare for this, your first view of your home planet from low Earth orbit. We spent 2 days catching up to the International Space Station, which started as a really bright light about 50 kilometers off in the distance, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is a view out the rear window of the space shuttle. So you're looking out the rear window of the car. You can see these big pedals or the docking mechanism. You can see the tail up at the top. You can actually see the Canada arm. As we do this pirouette maneuver, the space station crew are taking pictures of the space shuttle. And as the tail points up toward the space station, you can then see the space station rise in the background. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, that thing is massive. And it is. It is, internal volume is the size of a jumbo 747, or about the size of a 5-bedroom house. And if you were to lay the whole structure out, it would cover an entire football field. It was developed and designed all around the world by people speaking different languages, different cultures, different customs, different systems of measurement, built, flown to space, and assembled for the first time in low Earth orbit at speeds over 17,000 miles an hour. Our job was to, in the back of the space shuttle, we had a truss segment, which was about the size of a bus, weighed about 16 tons. Yeah, the space shuttle could carry that much stuff in it. And we were going to go out on a spacewalk. And while our friends were flying the robotic arm with this gigantic bus-sized object on the end of a robotic arm, we were going to climb out to the end of the space station, give them directions, and attach this last piece of truss hardware to the International Space Station. And that's John and Koichi flying the robotic arm. That's my hand right there. And he's flying the arm, and you can see the truss segment actually getting closer. This is sped up a lot. And it's astronaut proof, like number 2 goes with number 2, 1 goes with number 1. So we made sure we got it aligned correctly. But what you really can't prepare for in a spacewalk are these views. When you have a moment when mission control is trying to figure out a problem, that's something that arises, and you have an opportunity to kind of sit there traveling along at speeds you only could dream of, and watching this brilliant planet pass beneath your feet, it is a mind-blowing moment. To give you an idea of scale, that's Steve Swanson and I out on the S6 truss. These big pedals are going to have solar arrays, which you can see deploy. And those last 2 pairs of solar arrays, you saw earlier in the video, there were 3 people on the International Space Station at that time. And the space station was designed for 6 or 7 people. The reason we didn't have 6 or 7 is because we didn't have enough electricity. So the solar arrays we installed allowed us, after this mission, to fly a crew of 6 to the ISS. And with 6 people on the ISS, we were able to start doing the science program that the space station was designed and built for. And it's a pretty amazing place. We were just house guests, however. We slept where we could find a place to sleep. We ate when we found a few moments to eat. I don't think I ever found some of this stuff that was floating around. I thought maybe spinning it would make it better. But one of the real special things about the ISS, particularly as a shuttle crew, at the end of your mission, the night before you went home, we would go down to the Russian segment and share an international meal together to celebrate a successful mission. I didn't realize that 9 or 10 years later, I'd be back in the Russian segment every Friday night having a meal for the better part of 7 months, which would have blown my mind thinking about it at this time. Well, we were docked to the space station for 8 or 9 days. That's us closing the hatch. We're going to get ready to undock. It's a highly technical process. I'm in charge of it here. That button I push, it says undock, and it undocks. And this is looking out the rear of the space shuttle again. That's actually the space station, and we're backing away. And you can kind of get a view of the ISS. This is part of the U.S. segment. There's kind of a hollow tube that runs in this axis. The European lab on the right, the Japanese lab, European lab on the left, Japanese lab on the right. You can see the truss segment, and you can actually see the shadow of the orbiter as the sun rises behind us to light up the space station as we get ready to fly around it and then come back home. Coming back home on a space shuttle was not all that different of a sensation than landing in a commercial airliner. We landed on a runway in Florida. Our families were waiting there to welcome us home. It was not much of a different sensation. However, the space shuttle, doesn't have engines, right? It basically slows down from low Earth orbit and comes down as a glider. And if you don't make the runway, you're not coming home. You don't have a second chance to come back around. So we were pretty happy to land on the ground. It was a pretty smooth day.
Houston copies. Wheel stop. Welcome home, Discovery, after a great mission to bring the International Space Station to full power.
My second return to Earth was far more dramatic, and I have some video to show you. And as Mike said, in 2017, I was assigned to go back to the International Space Station to live and work as part of an international crew of 6. We were going to launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan in a Russian Soyuz rocket, 3 of us, to join 3 crew members on the ISS. We'd work together for 2 months. The 3 people who were waiting for us would go home. Another Soyuz would launch and join us, and we'd spend another 4 months together. Oleg Artemyev, our Russian commander, Drew Feustel, an American astronaut, and myself. At nighttime, climbing into our Soyuz rocket, the 3 of us, a lot smaller than the space shuttle, but the physics is the same. You're going from sitting still on the Earth in a little over 8.5 minutes. You're going to be traveling speeds over 17,000 miles an hour, going around the Earth every 90 minutes. This was a really sleek ride.
The crew still doing good.
Very small capsule. Did anyone go look at the Soyuz capsule up near Enterprise?
Here in Houston, good first stage separation.
You should go check it out today, because it's like 3 of your best friends riding to space in the trunk
Arnold
of a car.
On the right seat,
it's very, very small. So coming up to the ISS, I was pretty excited. This is actually what the space station looks like through the docking mechanism, and here we are approaching the space station. It's a little different sensation your second time when you're going up there for a long period of time. You're thinking about, what kind of things are going to be going on Earth, what birthdays and anniversaries and those kinds of things are you going to miss. But you're also excited about, I'm going to be able to actually live and work in space and call the International Space Station home. I'm not going to feel like a guest. I'm going to feel like it's my home. And that's kind of what we were thinking about as we were approaching the ISS, getting ready for our 197-day stay. Waiting on board, as I said earlier, were 3 crew members. I didn't really know a couple of them very well because we kind of trained separately. But you would never know from the greeting we received when we arrived to the space station. Anton Sklaparov was a Russian MiG pilot. I didn't really know Anton all that well, but you would have thought I was a long-lost brother based on the greeting I received from him. And we certainly grew to be a family. Because we shared a lot of things together that happen over the course of a year when you spend 6-7 months with someone. Shortly after we arrived, we're going to do the first of our 3 spacewalks on the U.S. segment, and you can see the benefit of some of those spacewalks because some of the things we were doing was installing the high-definition cameras that's providing views to you of Earth from the ISS.
It looks like midday meal.
This is also the first time our families had seen us since they saw us leave in a big explosion from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, because it took 2 days kind of without radio communication with home before we docked. So this is the first time they'd seen us since we'd arrived in space.
We'll be doing some more of that, and these guys will be getting us squared away.
Check out Nirashige's hair in the upper left-hand corner. I'll explain why his hair got like that as the mission went on. But within a week of arriving, we were going to do a first spacewalk. We were going to install some high-definition cameras. One of the big things those high-definition cameras are going to be able to have us do is this year, NASA will be launching 2 different vehicles from Kennedy Space Center, one built by Boeing, one built by SpaceX, that will carry astronauts, once again, to and from the ISS from the Kennedy Space Center. I don't know how to describe this when you see it in person. I think that extra high-definition cameras help provide it.
Out of juice, but we have a great high-def camera looking at Ricky's head.
This is actually me hanging upside down like a bat. You can see sunrise behind me as we installed one of the cameras. It gives you a sense of the complexity of the International Space Station, the scale of the International Space Station, and really the audacity of the International Space Station. Drew and I did more things than take pictures of each other, but when the images we have of each other is because we had a moment in time where we could take a few pictures and grab some video. A spacewalk lasts about 6.5 hours. You're in the suit for almost 11 hours. It's about 4 hours to get ready for a spacewalk, 6.5 hours to execute it, and about another half hour or so to get pulled back into the airlock and have your crewmates help you get out of the spacesuit. Allison and I she's a flight director. I'll be giving a presentation later today if you want to come hear about how you get ready to go do a spacewalk and what a team sport it is. Because you can see we can't even move ourselves and we can't get undressed ourselves. We need help every step of the way. Well, our 3 friends went home. We put on our best Hawaiian shirts and welcomed the next 3 people who had just launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome. There is nothing cooler than looking out the window and seeing 3 people in a spaceship coming to visit you. So Sergei Prokopiev was a Russian pilot. Alexander Gerst, a German astronaut and a German geoscientist with a little toy. And Serena Anyan Chancellor, an American flight surgeon. We were really fortunate. Nurishige, the guy with the hair, was a flight surgeon, and Serena was a flight surgeon. We had doctors with us the whole time we were there. Not everyone is so lucky. All of our materials and supplies come to the International Space Station by cargo vehicles. We have several that can come up to the U.S. side. We had an HTV, which launches from Japan. We have Cygnus, which launches from Virginia, and you can actually see the solar array from Cygnus right here. And going down Italy and then down the Nile and the Red Sea is a SpaceX Dragon. They fly up. They're controlled from the ground. They fly up, get in formation with the space station. It's all controlled from the ground. But the last little bit is one of the people on the space station flying the robotic arm to go out and grab a spaceship with the robotic arm. And this is me doing it. It's not that hard, except for the fact everyone you've ever worked with and ever known is watching, and there's thousands of pounds of really critical science equipment that probably cost millions of dollars, and you're responsible for going and capturing it with the robotic arm. Unpacking takes days. Sometimes they send ice cream, which is a pretty good deal. But one of our favorite things to do when we have free time, and life on space station is busy, 12-hour days while you're there, is spend time looking at the aurora over the North and South Pole as you fly into orbital sunrise. Get asked, can you see the Great Wall of China? Well, you can kind of find it, but what's really more impressive to me is the coral atolls of the South Pacific, built by very small animals, and at an extreme risk from sea level rise due to climate change. Flying down Italy, Greece, Cyprus, that long ribbon of light is the Nile River Valley. The Red Sea, up in the upper left-hand corner, thunderstorms over Yemen and the Horn of Africa. These green lights that you're seeing, those are actually fishing boats near Thailand. We go around the Earth every 90 minutes, 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. Flying down California, you can see all the smoke in the valley from the fires when we were there, over Mexico. You can see Central America. Heading off toward the left, we head back over the Pacific. The Galapagos Islands are down there somewhere under clouds. And then we make our way back over Peru, Argentina, down toward the southern tip of South America and into night. And this really kind of captures, the brilliance of our planet. And as you head into night, it just turns a deeper blue and then eventually just fades into black. And almost immediately after it turns black, you start to see city lights and the stars. It's just absolutely magnificent. Unfortunately, our cameras can't capture what your eyes can. This is a massive supercell thunderstorm over Oklahoma that spawned tornadoes in Oklahoma and northern Texas. You can see Dallas. This is a weird sensation. I remember this night. That's Houston. It flew right over my house. I was only like 240 miles from home, but it only lasted a moment. And again, the aurora as we head into dawn, and then there's a rainy morning somewhere for someone in Asia as thunderstorms. You can see the lightning below, which actually lights up the cupola where we take our pictures. And that's the robotic arm over on the right-hand corner. Any given day on the International Space Station, we have over 300 science experiments occurring. One of the things we are most proud of is we have bacteria that has been growing on the International Space Station since it first launched. And it's been up there for 20 years, and we were the first crew to analyze its RNA and sequence its RNA. Working on the ISS, there are a lot of complicated equipment, but you got a lot of really good people on the ground. One of the biggest challenges is keeping track of your tools that float. There's nothing more frustrating. You know how it is when you lose a tool in your own house? Well, imagine if it could float away. Or your crewmate doesn't remember that you told him, hey, I got a camera here, don't use it with your arm. This is actually a video down in the Russian segment as I was talking to a bunch of Japanese students on a ham radio. We exercise 2 hours a day. We have an exercise bicycle. You can see Serena down there messing with her hair. We have a treadmill, which we have to strap ourselves down to the treadmill in order to exercise. And we also have a weightlifting device. It's a resistive exercise device. And the reason we spend so much time exercising is because for 6-7 months, you don't stand, you don't walk, you don't fight gravity at all. This is how you get around on the space station. So without that exercise, well, we were the first crew, we think, to ever play tennis in space. We made up the rules as we went along. This is the old phone booth trick. How many people can you fit in one crew quarter? It turns out 6. This is why Nurishige never got his hair cut, because these are the 2 worst barbers in the solar system. And you can look at our haircuts and you'll probably agree. But one of the real pleasures on the space station remains the people you share the journey with. We would get together and have these multinational meals, talk about the week, talk about the challenges, talk about what's going on at home, and celebrate our successes and some of the things that were more challenging. Well, this is day 197. It's time for us to say goodbye to Sergei, Alex, and Serena. We close the hatch. They're going to close the hatch in the space station. We get into our spacesuits, get into our seats. We undock from the space station, and we start our 2.5-hour journey back to Earth, which starts peacefully enough, but soon devolves into a fireball. As you plunge through the Earth's atmosphere, you see the Earth getting bigger, you hear separation, and all of a sudden, this is the view out of my window. As we go flying through the Earth's atmosphere, this is what it looks like inside. You can see what it looks like out my window. Because the outside of the spaceship's heating up to thousands of degrees. You're getting thrown and tossed in all kinds of directions. You think when the parachute's open, it's going to get really peaceful, but for the first few moments, you're getting swung around. Then the parachutes start billowing, so you're bouncing up and down. This is inside. Alarms are sounding. And then an impossibly small plate gets even smaller to prepare for landing. You're coming close to Earth, and then the soft landing rockets fire, and you basically have a controlled collision with the planet. But within 20-30 minutes, the hatch opens. You smell Earth again for the first time. You see some fresh faces for the first time in 197 days. There's a group of people out in the deserts of Kazakhstan, some of whom you've never met before, some of whom I'll probably never see again. They help us get out of the capsule. They gingerly carry us over, put us in comfortable chairs, make sure we're all healthy. And you can see where we are. It's a very, very remote location, but we're surrounded by people who make us feel welcome. And the only thing you're thinking at this moment in time wasn't that, oh, my family's back in Houston, or I got to get on an airplane and fly. I'm just thinking, man, I'm home. I'm back on Earth. And I think that is the real joy of the space station, of the experience of the space station, and the ideal that made us as humans decide that building the space station was important, that we come together peacefully and set a higher objective for humankind. And when you spend time looking out the window at Earth, you realize you're kind of looking at a distorted mirror of what the ISS is, right? We've got 6 people floating around in space. We've got people all around the world, some of the brightest engineers, working 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, to keep 6 people alive on the space station. You get back to Earth, we're getting it all here for free. And I think the message from the space station really is, we are on this spaceship Earth together, and we really need to take better care of it. Because everything here, this is it as far as we know, right? I get asked all the time, is there any other life in space? Like, man, I hope so. But as far as we know, this is it. And as far as we know, this is the only place humans are capable of living and all of our other fellow travelers. And so I think we owe it to ourselves to do a better job taking care of it. Thank you very much for your attention. I have, I think, some time for questions if we want to turn the lights back on.
Yes, we do. And we have 2 mics.
All right.
I'll take this side. Any questions right over here? Got a question? Yeah? Here's our first question.
All right.
What do you want to ask?
You can ask whatever. Anything you want. Anything. Did you have something about space? Or think a while longer? Okay. Anyone with their question ready? Here's one.
Did you drink Tang?
I'm not sure everyone here knows what Tang is, but but we did it. Interestingly enough, all of our water, anything liquids we drink are in a pouch, and you drink everything through a straw. Cups really don't serve a purpose on the International Space Station. And so we did have powdered drinks. I don't think we actually, I know I did not drink any Tang while I was there. I drank a lot of tea. Yes, hi.
First of all, is this on? Can you hear me?
I can hear, but I'm not sure.
I can project without it, but just in case. You're extraordinary, and it's just
Well, that's
such
very
a
kind.
joy to have you here and hear your perspective. So thank you for your service to our country and the universe. But I'm curious if you
Very
could
kind.
answer this. Is it frustrating for you, or it was just the way it was supposed to go, that now the only way for you to get back to that former home up there is through a Russian spacecraft or private industry? And do you think that SpaceX is going to be successful getting us to Mars, let's say in the next 15 years?
I think, thanks for the question and the very kind comment. No, it's not frustrating to me. I think that's kind of the beauty of the partnership, right? We had a catastrophe when we lost Columbia. We realized that the space shuttle's capabilities for helping finish the space station, if we could fly it safely to finish the ISS, but we also knew it wasn't sustainable. So we relied on our Russian friends to get to and from the ISS. The SpaceX and Boeing, those are NASA missions. Those folks are building the vehicles for us. They will fly this year. I'm pretty sure both of them will launch a mission this year. I'm very excited to have redundant capability to the space station, right? Because getting people to and from space is complicated. If something happened with the Soyuz rocket, God forbid, we would have no access to the space station. So having redundant capability was absolutely critical. When we lost Columbia, the only reason we were able to get even people home from the space station was because of a Russian Soyuz rocket, right? So I think we're on the edge of something pretty spectacular, and I think where we are is space is becoming more accessible. And I think these kids sitting here in the audience today, we not only have Boeing and SpaceX building vehicles, Blue Origin is probably not far from launching people to suborbital space flights. Virgin Galactic already has done a suborbital flight. And I think space is becoming more accessible, which I think at the end of the day is a really good thing. I'm optimistic. It takes time, but when you look back it's 50 years. We've only been doing this for 50 years. And for 20 of those, we've had people in space continuously. I guess it's been closer to 60 years now that we've been doing it, but still, it's not a long time.
Ricky, over here.
Thank you. Yes.
Nope, this side.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Is it scary when you're hanging out of the space station and looking down on Earth?
My first time doing that, I just thought it was really cool. And I remember flying along. I had a few moments, and I was holding on to the space station. Of course, we're tethered, and you'll see some of the tools if you come a little later, if you visit Allison outside. But I remember I had a moment, and I was tethered to the ISS, and I let go, and I'm just sitting there floating along with the space station with the Earth passing beneath my feet. And I was like, man, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. Well, when I flew, and maybe it was just because I was older and a little bit smarter, it's like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm doing this, And on my second space flight, one of my first spacewalk, I had to fly on the robotic arm, on the end of the robotic arm. So you kind of anchor your feet in these restraints, but because you have this big spacesuit around you can't see your feet. And someone inside is going to be flying you with a hand controller, and you can't see that you're attached to anything. And I remember the first time, like, okay, I'm getting ready to let go of the space station. I'm getting ready to let go. And I kept, I'm getting ready to let go. And finally, I couldn't hold on any longer. And I finally let go, and I'm thinking, oh, man, I hope my feet stay in. I hope my feet stay in. I hope my feet stay in. So it was a pretty intimidating experience the second time. And it was very strange. I think the first time I had trained a lot more, and we had a very, very well choreographed spacewalk. So my mind was completely focused on what we had to get done one after the other after the other. With the ISS, the spacewalks were a little less rigorously planned. I wasn't as familiar with the procedures because I just had a lot of other stuff I was supposed to do. And so I think I had more time to think about the audacity of what we were doing. But yeah, it can be a little mind-boggling what you're doing.
All right, I have a question.
Sure. Yes, sir.
This is about something I know.
All right. What do you know?
Space is 100 kilometers above Earth.
That is true. I think that's where the Kallman line is. That's right. And when you get to that line, that's when you officially become an astronaut. You thinking about trying it? Maybe? Where are we?
Here we are. Ricky?
Yes.
How was it like living in the water for you said 10 days?
10 days underwater.
Was it salt water?
Yeah, it was the ocean.
How did it smell?
It smelled like the beach. It was really cool. And it was a really good training for what it would be like to live on the space station. You think about it, we were in a confined space. We couldn't go home readily. All of our food had to be sent down to us. The big difference for me was, on the space station, when you had free time, you would go and look out the window at Earth. And I remember we had these gigantic Goliath groupers. These fish might be 5-6 feet long, weighed 300 pounds. And they would hang around our habitat. And at night, at the end of the day, we're on the space station, I'd be looking at Earth. When we were living in Aquarius, when we were getting ready to go to bed, the groupers would come up and look at the window at us, just to kind of see what we were doing.
Ricky? So, Ricky, with that, is it similar then to going to the ISS? This isn't a submarine that goes down. It's a habitat that's down there already.
It's anchored down there.
Something brings you down, and you have to then lock on or travel from it to. So it's very similar. Can you just describe that for a second?
Sure. It's anchored off the coast of Florida in about 60 feet of water. So you swim down to it. It has it's pressurized like a can, like a soda can. Has a hole in the bottom, but because there's pressure in it, the water can't come in. It's kind of like you take a bucket and put it underwater. You can come back up under the bucket and still be underwater and breathe. They would call that the wet porch. So we would dive off the boat, swim down, come in the wet porch, get acclimatized to what it would be like to get ready to live there, and then we would just start living and working there. At the end of the 10-day mission, because we've been underwater for so long, we had to change the pressure, so it took about 24 hours to kind of get ready to go to make sure we wouldn't have any nitrogen issues and nitrogen in our bloodstream. And then they'd open the hatch, they'd give us a little bailout bottle, and we'd dive into the porch and then swim to the surface, and then you would smell Earth for the first time in 10 days.
Or anything?
Oh, yeah, you went to the bathroom. I can't hold it for 10 days.
Did you get internet?
Yes. And we did, and I didn't like it. Honestly, the first couple months, our internet was so bad that I just didn't even mess with it. And it was really cool because there wasn't internet, so when we had free time, we would just sit and socialize, tell stories, talk about home, everything else. About halfway through my mission, we got really good internet, and guess what happened? People sitting there with their iPads, and I think the social structure broke down a little bit. Not that that's happened here on Earth at all. But yeah, I think it was there was some benefit to it, but overall, I thought it was a negative thing. I did not miss being connected to information all the time. Took a little getting used to, but once it was gone, I was like, good riddance. Most of the information we process off the internet, most of it's really not that important to us. But at least
here,
for
Ricky.
me, I don't think so.
Ricky, up
Yes?
here.
Okay, yes.
Whenever you took off, did like people throw up? Like
When you took off,
on the spaceship?
some people do get a little queasy. My first time to space, I felt a little sick. I didn't get sick, but I felt kind of, for the first couple days, I felt a little not great. Some of my crewmates got sick. I got really sick coming back to Earth, which is kind of strange. I felt like my head was spinning like a top. But my second trip to space, I got there and immediately my brain remembered and I was fine. It was, the second time was very, very easy. Still coming back to Earth was hard though, which seems kind of counterintuitive.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your question. This is the last one for today.
All righty.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I think you said the ISS orbits Earth at 17,000 miles per hour. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
On a spacewalk, do you feel that sensation of that tremendous speed?
When you see the Earth going by, and if you're on a spacewalk and you're over San Francisco Bay, and you can see Mexico coming, that's kind of mind-boggling. I mean, we fly in supersonic jets to train, so they fly pretty fast. But when you're flying over San Francisco and you just see how, when you pick out where you are on the Earth, you cross the Mediterranean Sea in minutes. You're over Europe and you can see Africa. I mean, it's just, so you do get the sensation of speed. But if you're not looking at Earth, you don't feel it. But it's just the perspective of seeing the Earth pass beneath you is where you get that sense.
Okay, now this might be the end of the questions, but we're not finished with Ricky yet. So he's been really gracious enough to stay and sign autographs. So we have pictures, and there are a lot of people. So to make it easiest, if I stand here, if the people on this side could step into the aisle and form a line there, and if you people could exit that side and go around and join the line.
And please join us later.
It's clear. All right. I should have got the light, and I got to point the light in my face, but you got audio? Yep. All right. Well, let me turn this on real quick. And if you're watching the stream, give me a status check. Let me know that you can hear us okay. I'm going to go and look over here and just make sure y'all can hear us okay as well. Switching saved. Yeah, it was a big sort of rush. There's people like lining up and moving out of the theater, so I just cut off the camera really briefly. But that was former astronaut Ricky Arnold talking about his experiences in space, showing us some of his videos and stuff like that he took while he was up on the space station and on this, well, I guess the Soyuz as well. Those interior views of the Soyuz coming down is pretty cool. You can hear me, right? Yeah, you can hear me. Everybody's fine. So what's going to go on next? That is our last presentation for right now. The next presentation that's coming up is going to be this afternoon, but I do not believe, I need to check the schedule, that one won't be streamed on my channel here. What we're planning on doing this afternoon is sharing some of this content with NASA Spaceflight. So we're going to have Ricky Arnold and we're going to have Allison Bollinger doing their spacewalks, a team sport. presentation, but instead of streaming that on my channel, we'll be streaming that over at the NASA Spaceflight YouTube channel. So when we come back, we have another opportunity to do a Q&A, a little bit of an interview with Ricky Arnold beforehand. That's going to start around 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and then at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Ricky Arnold and Allison Bollinger will be on the stage doing their Spacewalks, a team sport presentation. But those things are going to be on the NASA Spaceflight YouTube channel. For now, what we're going to do with this stream, we're going to shut it down, and we have some things that we need to coordinate here. We are going to try to use the new little experimental camera. Remember when I was at Wallops and I had the little experimental camera? We're going to try to do some live streaming using that experimental camera as we can over the next basically 2 hours. It's 12:49 right now, hour and 40 minutes, whatever that turns out to be, right? But for now, I am going to shut this stream down, and we will pack up a couple things, check some things out, make sure everything's good, and if we are able, we will use that little IRL camera to see how it works here at the Intrepid, and maybe go do some more interviews with people, maybe just walk around Hangar 3. I'm not sure what we'll do with it, but I'm shutting the stream here down for now. Again, thanks for everybody for hanging out with us over the presentations this morning. We did some interviews in the hangar. We saw Allison over on the stage. We saw Ricky here. Mike Massimino introduced him. And then EJ and me and Brimo and everybody were sort of talking in between. But we'll shut this down for now. You'll see the donor page for just a minute. And again, thank you very much for supporting us in this. Thank you for your financial support, honestly, because our gear and our travel and that sort of stuff, you've made these sorts of things possible so we can share this content on Twitch and basically all over the place. So thank you very much. But clear for a little bit. If we're able to come back, it'll be with a little experimental camera, and we'll see how that goes. But thanks for watching. Oh, and EJ is, actually, EJ is still live. Yes, thank you, Hydra. EJ is walking around the flight deck right now. So we can actually just go ahead and host EJ, and you'll have something else to watch right now. That's actually a great point. Thank you, Hydra, for saying that. EJ is still live. So go watch EJ, and if we're able, we'll be back in just a bit. Now, thanks for watching, and thanks for the support.